Hey guys, this is Maragakis. This is a quick tutorial on my kick chain of effects. How to get the kick tightened up and sound really good without it being distorted or anything. So let's switch back to my monitor and we'll get started. Alright, so here's a project I'm working on. I usually have my kick at the very first channel in Ableton. That's the way I like to work. So it'll be right here, and then I color it red. I always color it red. That's just how I work. So I got my kick sample here, and any kick sample or most hits, like any drum hits, usually have two parts to it. So they have the transient, which is the very beginning, which is basically the slap when you hit the membrane with your hand or a mallet. It makes that slap sound, and it has a bunch of frequencies all over the place, high ends, mids, and lows. Not so much lows because they come later. So the tail is everything after the transient, which has a lot of the low end. So this is the sample that I'm loading in. First thing I always do is I load up a utility, and then I make it mono. So what I do is the width. I'll just delete that. Load a blank utility. It's at the end of my chain. Put it up right after the sample plays. The width is usually set at 100%, 100% left-right signal, because right now it's on stereo. I would bring it down to 0. Once it's at 0, that means the signal is mono, forced mono, down the center. So equally, whatever you hear on the left side, you'll equally hear on the right side. And that's really what you want with kicks. The next thing here is my EQ. I have these parameters that I set differently every single time, so I just load a blank EQ8 in Ableton. I roll off the really deep lows, like those usually get fuzzy, and if you roll off just way at the end, you'll actually clean up the kick. I do the same with the highs. You don't want to roll off too much of the highs because it gives a character to the kick. So you really want to just get those like super high frequencies out of the way. Then I would bring down the muddiness a little bit. So what you're looking for is like a wooding, knock on wood kind of hollow sound. If you take that down, your kick will sound so much cleaner. Amazing. Then I also bring then I bring up, not all the time today, on this example, I brought more of the low end a little bit, just a decibel boost. Not every kick needs that. Sometimes I'll leave it flat as is. Sometimes I'll boost it up just a tiny bit. After that, I have a compressor, and again, I just load in a blank compressor. I take off the makeup. I raise the output to match the signal coming in as far as loudness goes. Ratios are usually good anywhere between 2.5 to 4. 3.5 is a good range. You really just have to kind of determine on your own. You do want a good quick compression. Threshold, you don't want to lower the threshold too much because you'll actually lose a lot of the low end. If you have the threshold super low, you will lose a lot of the low end, and then you'll be at the club and then you're like, what's going on? It's not hitting hard. Your attack, I bring it up. You don't want to distort the sound, so if your attack is too low, not only will you get distortion, but this kick, I want it to preserve the transient and really just boost the rest of it, the low end, the tail. So with a slower attack, 4 milliseconds, it's not really going to touch the beginning of the sample, and then it's going to compress the rest of the sample, giving it a boost. Compression normally will bring down the volumes, but then you boost the output, or you have a makeup signal, so it'll bring it back to the same loudness as you had, usually making everything louder because you're bringing all the higher frequencies down to a level and then boosting the whole level back up. So yeah, and then I have a spectrum just to see what's going on, but every one of these, like the EQ8, has its own spectrum, so this isn't really needed. So the most important thing is to force everything in mono. Most kick samples are already in mono, but You never know, so it's really good practice to just throw in a mono, force it into mono, EQ it so it sounds tight, and then compress it a little bit to make it boomy and snappy. And there you go. It's really simple. I do this on all my kicks, and once you start doing this, it's like second nature. You start EQing it roughly to get it sounding great, throw in a compressor, and then at the end of the project, I always go back and really focus on the kick because the kick is super important in dance music. So I'll do final little tweaks and adjustments just to make sure it sits well with the rest of the track. And that was my tutorial. Hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions, just post them below and I'll read them. And if you guys work on your kicks a little bit differently, I'd love to hear it. So again, post your comments below. Thanks.